automating your stalking with Jason Butler. This is going to be a very Jason-centric journey through my experience with location and how that makes the technology. And it's going to be kind of a light run covering these topics on a nice, Friday afternoon before the Christmas party. So now's the time to leave if that's not what you're here for. Yeah, automating your stalking. That's actually, I'm already doing some of that. Let's see, bring up Google Maps, which I have on all the time. You can actually see, yeah, there's my wife at work in Grafton, and then I don't know why my kids are in town actually at the park. That's odd. We live up in Belmont. Yeah, both of them, right? They're at the, where are they at?
At the museum.
Art museum, yeah. Okay, that's good. They're in town at the art museum. Yeah, so we already keep track of each other. It usually works. Occasionally they'll have me over a place I shouldn't be, but overall it makes it easier. No, yeah, I'm sure you guys have all seen this too, right? The timeline, where it can track everywhere you've been. Yeah, I'm doing a good job of covering New Zealand here. It's like I kind of gave up years ago, just like that, let track. I didn't go to work that day. No, I didn't see.
We say 20.
Yeah.
So.
Never mind. No, never mind. So yeah, thinking about kind of, I guess, location service broadly enough, you can kind of go way back even before, technology really got involved. I thought this was a really cool example. This guy, John Snow, back in 1800s, there was a big cholera, yeah, no relation, but he saved just about as many people as the fake one. They did a map of like all the cholera deaths in this big epidemic in London, and then he also marked another map, that had location of water pumps and overlaid it. It's obvious now, but that's only thinking back at the time. This was kind of revolutionary. They actually found one water pump that was kind of infecting the whole this whole area. So they got rid of that one water pump, and it kind of it's credited with ending the outbreak. So I thought that was pretty cool, combining the locations. And this is a more modern kind of broad view of it. It's actually just researching for this talk even realize that this is just a broad area that can kind of go on forever. And I don't even know what half of these are, but it's obviously been like a huge benefit to business, the commercial side of things over the years. But even like if you just think from a personal side, just the advancements of like GPS and having always available internet is kind of like a really cool thing. And it's just cool to have like detailed ongoing directions, and you can factor that in with things like traffic and what kind of transportation you're on, walking or on a train or in a car, and how easy it is to find people in real time and keep that ongoing. Like I just found out my daughter's right at the museum. That's kind of a cool technology to have. And so I guess a lot of this is going to be about Google because I use that a lot and I actually like it a lot. And then I've said non-jokingly, if I didn't have Google Maps on my phone, I would probably pay like $1,000 for it. It's so handy, it's so useful. I love it. And these are this is just a cut and paste job, I think, from Wikipedia. Some of the things you can do with location, it's kind of endless. And what I think is really cool is like, if you think back just 30 years ago in location and technology in general, location specifically, like none of this was around. GPS was, just a military thing, and you didn't have internet, no cell phones. The maps you did have were very, low resolution, and you had things like phone books and yellow pages, and you asked directions a lot, and you got lost a lot, and kind of, sometimes I think people didn't even go places just because they were scared. So it's kind of how cool we've come in such a short period of time.
Out of curiosity, how many people in here, when they started driving, had a map book in their car that was in like the side of the little thing next to their door? We pulled the map book out to see where we were at.
When you started, when my parents were driving.
Yeah, the big paper maps we used to carry.
Yeah, he still lug them around. It was great.
I was actually got on the side of this, which is kind of cool to be able to see it. It's like this is a paper map of my home state of Illinois, and it was mean, this is what you had, but it was actually kind of horrible. It's like, you've got these little arrows up there telling you like how much, distance there is between some of these intersections, and it's missing all kinds of roads in there. Cursor there, yeah. So actually the town I grew up in was right here. It's not even listed. They don't have the crossroads. They don't have Sheridan, town of Sheridan on there. It's like, it's so wild. It was kind of just accepted that. And I guess that's obvious, but it was like different to live during that time period. It was like, it's kind of hard to articulate. You just kind of had a vaguer idea of things, and you kind of got by word of mouth. And, I think you just didn't go places. The world just seemed very different. You just didn't have this kind of information at hand. And I mean, it's true at the business level as well. People just, businesses didn't know where their products and people were near as much. And I'm going to talk later about the insurance industry that I was in a lot. And like hurricane insurance being near the coastline is a big factor. And obviously they had insurance back then before they had all this technology, but it just wasn't near as accurate. Some people should have qualified for insurance or could not get it. And people that probably shouldn't have had it may have been able to get it, which is bad too, because it just encourages building in areas that are unsafe. So it's like in a short amount of time, this technology has just helped so much. I think it's kind of amazing.
So is that Sandwich Forest? Sandwich.
Where's it?
Where your cursor is just a little bit.
Sample. It's funny you say that. So you see the next one. I got another. This one, I don't know if that one's actually a paper map. This one is. And I thought it had it up there. Sandwich. So there's my town of Sheridan. They finally have it on the map on this one on paper, but there's like one line going through it. It doesn't even have all the roads. And now I think back, like I've always loved maps, and even as a kid, this is what we had. But I wanted more. I used to go around exploring town. I was always outside, and like I wanted to know, where the roads were, where the river was, where these different trails were and stuff. So I tried to do hand maps, and that didn't work very good. I tried to get like even got a hold of a city planning map once, and it was just wildly inaccurate. It had roads that were never built and stuff. So it's like this information like didn't exist. It was now we take it for granted. And this is great. Now here's my hometown. It's got the river. It's got every single road. It's actually it's surprisingly accurate. Yeah, it's a small farm town.
It's a Hamilton of Illinois.
This is funny. There's Sandwich there, and there's Plano. They said they were always going to build a town in between called Bologna, so you could have a Plano bologna sandwich. It's a Midwest humor for you there. And there we go. So the cool thing is, like, even obviously, I mean, it's the stuff you guys already know, but like,
It's the rating of Calico.
Yeah.
you can do street views of this, although it's pretty outdated. So I can finally zoom in, like on my childhood home, and through the magic of the internet, I could see that it was
That's a nice area.
it was basically a dump. The whole kind of the whole town. You romanticize this stuff, but if you look back, this is a tiny dead town. This is like the main street right here.
Man, you got a cafe. So how do you
Yeah. All right. So what was Jason doing in the 1980s? And I guess like the term nerd doesn't really have a negative connotation now that it used to, but back in the day, this was a battle that we were in constantly, and there was not much glory and benefits in it. So some of us were out there in the trenches before you guys.
Is that you?
That's hilarious.
Oh my gosh.
That was me.
Wow. Yeah.
Oh wait, go back. That was so cute.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm so glad we got this on recording.
Yeah. So like, I usually don't go. You almost never hear me talk about the good old days, the golden days of technology or anything. I like to live in the present and think about the future, but this is an exception. We're going to do a little bit right now.
cassette player, right?
Yes, this is the
Yeah.
first computer, which was like a TI-99/4A, had 16 kilobytes of memory. It was actually kind of decent for its day. It used like a TV for a monitor, which was good because that color. It had like a really good speech synthesizer, which was kind of cool. The most notable thing was, yeah, you actually saved and loaded programs through a cassette player, and that was horrible. It took forever. It was super error prone. I'd leave the computer on, all day because I'd never get like a good save of a program. I'd go to school, try to save, come home, go to bed, just anything to try to get a good copy of a program. And what could you do with a computer like that when it came to mapping? Absolutely nothing. It was useless for that. That's why I said I tried to draw a map of Sheridan with a pencil and paper. I'm sure I have one somewhere, but it's not in New Zealand. So then a few years later, we got AT&T 8086, and that was actually running DOS, and it had a 10 megabyte hard drive. This is computer. And it had a green monochrome monitor. I don't know why they didn't make them in black and white. That would have been a lot better than seeing everything in green.
Yeah, that was good. Good old days.
Me on the left. Yeah. This is actually a little better. It actually did have PC Paint, and you could do an image file like in a PIC format. And spent a lot of time doing that. I actually thought I had a digital copy of that, but I couldn't find it on my 8 terabit hard drive at the house that I thought that has all these great archives. Moving into the 90s, we moved from Illinois to Georgia, got a 386 with Windows and a modem. It was kind of a big upgrade. It actually started acting like more than just a toy. It was actually starting to become a little bit useful. And finally, we had digital maps, and we had CD-ROMs, up to 700 megabytes, so much bigger than that 10 megabyte hard drive I had. And this was kind of cool because it was before the internet. So you had these CDs that actually had just a massive amount of data, and they advertised these things like gangbusters in the magazines of the day, like just, pretty much you could get all of human information in one of these CD-ROMs. They kind of oversold it a little bit. So like you had this program here that's supposed to have detailed maps of the world. This is what you actually got. Because reality was not quite
Oh, that's so cool.
what the expectations were. You got like a super low res, worse than paper. You got the always helpful, maps of the state and like national anthems and 8-bit, like all kinds of useful stuff for doing mapping. And then so I was going through the hard drive at home, going through all this old stuff, and I realized I had way too much information. So I'm going to stop with the blast from the past.
Oh my
But
God. That's so cute.
But
My heart.
Oh, you realize that one hidden in the background?
yeah, don't you see my Fabio
No, why don't you hide
hairstyle?
that one?
Yeah.
You made a purple page.
Yeah, actually that was so yeah, I kept writing the software got better and the maps got better. So like in the mid 1990s, I did land entertainment information, which was like just a little Windows program. It actually had mapping, you could kind of zoom in and out. And then Babe was ballot access barrier eliminator. That was like door-to-door petitioning to get signatures, to get political candidates on the ballot. A lot of that, it's kind of looking back, it's like, wow, we've got a lot of this stuff. Like did like SMS kind of traffic updates, like early 2000s, before that was really a thing. And none of that was as my job. So fast forwarding, thankfully, 2011, I was at an insurance company, and I had nothing to do with location. That wasn't why I was hired. When I was doing that stuff. And I had this was like looking back, this was actually really cool. That I was working with some standards data import forms, and my boss came to me, and came to me and said, we need an app from like scratch that can define. Someone can put an address in, and we can find exactly how far they are from the coastline. And by the way, the coastline's got we define it in house. That's what we do with the insurance company. And yeah, and he's like, Jason, get that done. And I had no clue how to do this at all.
So that wasn't bad.
It's a little like that, yeah. So obviously, the first thing I started doing is Googling, like, how do you find latitude, longitude, to a fixed, a complex line that you define. And so some of those top hits, like this one here, this gets into some of the math on how you can kind of do stuff. And this is actually between just points. This isn't even a line. I just wanted to start somewhere. But these get super complicated. Like I said, this isn't even for a line. All these complicated to me. And that was just for 2 points. A lot of these talk about like a perfect sphere. Like you can see some of these first complaints. Where's it at? Yeah, most of all the information this guy's getting here is on like an actual sphere, not the Earth. So it's not exactly what we needed either. It's a weird topic because like here, like there's another question in San Francisco is like all these get all these negative ones. People, there's always mistakes in how people do these. And even like some of the calculations, this is just for a line that is actually like 2 segments, like an A and a B. And we needed one that was like a lot more than that. So it's kind of stuck. Oh yeah, and then I had talking to coworkers. They had lots of great suggestions. It was a fun topic. They were like, you know, try to just map the distance to all the other points. That the map on that wasn't quite as hard. And then like use the closest point, but then like this stuff breaks down obviously, right? The closest point could be this point and this point over here. Really the line is here. So that kind of stuff wouldn't quite work. And then this is a, you know, a company defined, this is defined for insurance purposes. So the coastline didn't mirror exactly on the coast. It actually, it could actually be, you'd have a spot on the other side of it. So that's like another, how do you know what side of the line you're on? Because once you get the distance down. So I wasn't really getting any help there. So yeah, so broke it down to some simple steps using Google address autocomplete, which was, it was actually easy to use back then. You didn't need an API key or anything. Just kind of query it up to a few thousand times a day without any problem. And that was to, you had to do that to get the lat long back then. Now they actually include the lat long in the autocomplete. So the second step was to do the geocoding where you take the complete address and then get a lat long. It's still the geocoding sometimes is actually a little bit better than just purely going by the autocomplete because it can do a more thorough search. So, but those two were relatively easy. It was step 3, which was, you know, calculating the distance to a line with over 6,000 points on it. Still getting nowhere. And then did a bunch of research. Finally stumbled across spatial database types and some standards around that, which was not a concept that was really, in my opinion, well documented. I mean, even go to documentation, this was like just today. It's still, it tells you what it is, but it doesn't really, in my mind, go into a lot of detail. And it's using some SQL data types that are just default in SQL, you don't have to add anything. And then they have these little concepts, you know, like measure distance between different geometry data types. It seemed kind of too good to be true, and but I was getting desperate at that point, so I thought I might as well give it a try. And demo. All right, so it's really easy stuff. This is just basic SQL stuff. So usually the way this is done, and I definitely prefer it, is I guess you create these geospatial types. You don't literally need a separate table, but it's much better to have a table that just keeps all the lat long pairs. And then the sequence is very important because these have to be read in a certain sequence. And the type you're making, like crisscrosses or doesn't connect, it won't complete. You'll just get a null return back. Then coastline ID, that's because like you may have different lines you want to identify it. And I like to do type because I'll actually identify the points differently as between lines you want visible and points you want visible in a line and ones you don't. So make this table. So it just has the lat long pairs. This one's even simpler. This is just the coast ID. I just kind of identifies and then the shape. There it is, just that type there. Geography type. This is, there's lots of websites like this. Never got to try to, I never did make an actual website for getting these points. This wasn't a high priority, but we did have a business owner kind of define these using a tool like this. So you can just make a coastline. Big for this one. Well, the problem is you could calculate for this, maybe, but you still don't know what side of the line you're on. So what we came up with is doing like lines out into the ocean that you wouldn't see. This is where the distinguishing between the lines that were visible and ones that wouldn't be visible, even though they're all in the same data table. So we'd have a line go like out here, and these would be exaggerated off the coast. This is primarily on the east coast of the US. You kind of get the shape there. You take these lat longs. Just so you don't have to seem to type all this, format all this out. Roughly based on the same area. Yeah, the sequence is important, and it has to actually it has to be counterclockwise. That was a hard one to figure out why my shapes won't generate. That's a part of it's not well documented. You have to be counterclockwise, and this last point has to actually be exactly the same as the first point. So like a lot of times you're making a complete shape. So that's like, all right, this one was commented out. So I did it earlier and actually put in the actual numbers from up there. And then this L for lines and the P for polygon, that's for later. Like if you're generating this on a Google map, you can just show a line with of the L1. So you'll just see the coastline. You won't see these weird shapes out in the ocean that you're going to use later for seeing what side the line is on. So load those guys up. And then the next part actually generates the shape. So all this is really doing here is just building up the string where it's just taking all now it's these alternate, it doesn't seem like there's a standard, whether longitude or latitude come first. I see it go both directions, but in this one, it went longitude first. And yeah, you're just making a string here and then actual, yeah, it's just this geography type and then with the string value in there. And then this is like a magic number. This is telling it to use what's it based on? It was 1984. They came up with like a standard kind of shape of the Earth, and they updated, I think, in 2004. But they still use the old number. It's just telling it which model of the Earth to use. So just by doing this here, this should take those lat longs we created, put them inside the shape table. See if it's in there. If it doesn't work, you don't get a ton of feedback always, but it'll give you a null if it doesn't work. Yeah, cool. So there's the old Pacific Ocean, and then the shape is just it's really not a useful value. It's cool. You get a little tab here, and it'll show you the shape you've defined. This is just built in the SQL. No, you can do multiple. This is just one row. If you have like lots of these shapes on the Earth, it'll overlay them all for you. Gets better. I like to do this in stored procedure. I mean, I guess you can without one, but just setting everything up. And first thing we're doing is actually checking if, they're passing, if we get the coastline, we get the lat long, and then we convert those into the appropriate types. Then the first thing is seeing if the point we have intersects with the shape. And if it does intersect, it yeah, if like the dot is dot is inside the shape we created, they'll give you this error here. So we return a -1. So it actually, in its mind, you're in the ocean. You're on the wrong side of the line. So that's how we got around that, being on the wrong side of the line. You're actually inside the shape and you're on the wrong side of the line. It actually helped a lot because some of these shapes get very complicated, different peninsulas and stuff. So once that's determined that you're not inside the shape, then it's just this line here where it'll just this SD distance. And it's done in meters. So you multiply it out and convert it to miles in here. So if you take something like our office, ooh, I don't know if you can see that, but it is 14.34 kilometers from our office to that shape, which is kind of cool. It actually works.
The closest one in the shape or the middle of?
Closest point. One more. So like way down here, which is still on land, they'd be on the wrong side of the line. Yeah, that would be the closest point. Kind of makes sense. It really, for our purposes, that's what we wanted for the insurance rates. Should come back with a -1. Yeah, -1, saying it's on the wrong side of the coastline. So that actually kind of worked. So that's cool. This is what the first version looked like of the tool set. Actually, we actually drew the line out in Google Maps. So it's missing a lot of stuff, but as a proof of concept, it worked really well. And we had to define coastline with 6,000 points, which was kind of a lot. It actually handled it really well. It didn't seem to be a problem. It was user defined. I mean, there's a lot of these that are like free. I know, like New Zealand, I looked, they have like a KML file of all the points around the ocean. So you don't have to use your own. Another one. Don't think my boss's boss actually said this, but that was the gist of it. Is like they loved this proof of concept. This was kind of new, so they wanted to do a lot more stuff with it. And that was just kind of a proof of concept. So there was a lot more stuff. It's like we had to be accurate. We had to take that kind of geocoding even more seriously than just doing like a quick address search by autocomplete. Then we had things like cost and scale that we had to think about, which is kind of more research, finding out what service provides the best results and for the best rate. It also meant, just being smart for how you design it, using caching, multiple coastlines at once. That actually worked pretty well. It's just you got to be careful. It can get complicated if you have multiple shapes that you're comparing to at once, and what rules you put around those, managing complexities. Yeah, and then they got things that weren't even related to the distance to coast, ISO territories. It's kind of funny. Those are actually it's weird. They're complicated, which territory you live in. This is kind of like a universal thing for the US and insurance companies use, and it was hard to map it. But actually in that case, we used a very pragmatic solution. Is we could, based on the zip code, we could, most of the time, like 98% of the time, you'd only have one zip code would be to one territory, so we just return this is the one, and then 2% of the time we had two or more, we just return a list and just say we know which one it is, but here's a list of it. And that actually was a really simple, pragmatic way of doing it instead of trying to remap this whole all these ISO territories. Then also working around some errors in the Google data. Talk about that in a minute. And there's property building data. This is actually like the last thing I did there. Around this location API, it was actually really cool. We were the first to use like I guess CoreLogic, which does a lot of property stuff for real estate. They would do whether it kind of described the house, and we would use those descriptions and a lot of trial and error and a lot of business knowledge to try to map in things like what kind of building materials the house was, by what the description was. There's 1 story wood, we think wood joist framing, and then get things like year built, and if you saw a description of the word sprinklers, we could add sprinklers in, and it was actually really cool. We did a lot of work on that. We could like adjust the confidence and how confident we were in it, and we never used it just we didn't take it verbatim, but we would do it as the defaults for who was entering this stuff. We were kind of the first person in the industry to do that. I guess a little bit about the type of insurance we did, not to go too far in a tangent, but it was binding authority. So that means we were a wholesale insurance company, so we would let other companies, like hundreds of them, hundreds, right, getting close to 1,000 different small insurance companies can write our insurance by themselves. And binding authority meant that we wrote all the technical tools to allow them to do this without our involvement, even though we were the one insuring them. So we had to be extra careful with the tooling to make sure that it matched up, with what we wanted for our rates. So it's kind of a cool space to work in because of that. We were like giving end users the ability to sign us up for millions of dollars. So the tooling had to be really well done, which is cool because we got the resources and the time to do it. And that property building was part of that. Yeah, just a couple of quick kind of things that we had to overcome is we use Google, and the request limit technically was 10 requests a second. And I didn't actually keep count of how many requests we did. I really didn't see an upside in that. Google just returned you're over your query limit, and there wasn't like any penalty to hit your limit. And so I would just wait a second and a half and call it again and try that up to 4 times. But the funny thing is like over a 10-second period, you think you should only get like 100 requests. But just by doing that logic, so I don't know if it tricked Google or what, but they didn't care, but we could like double it. We could get like 200 requests. And I mean, I guess it depends on your business needs, but for us that it was more than sufficient. And this kind of logic was handy too, because rarely, but occasionally Google services would go down. But usually they would be down for just 1 request call, just waiting that 1.25 seconds and calling again, it would come back. So that really kept us with really good uptime. And we could get for our needs, we could get a lot of traffic through. Caching, I mean, you guys know how to do caching, but I guess the crux there is a lot of these services have very specific rules around what they'll allow to be cached. And I know Google at the time, you could only cache for performance reasons, not for saving money. So, and you can only do it for 30 days. So we did not do it for money saving reasons, only for performance, I'm sure. And what we would, I guess the cool part was the key was just the URL that we were calling to Google. So that would be the key. So anytime that was called, the second time around, we had that same URL, and we would look to see if we had any cache, and then we just return the same JSON object back. And if it was, over the time limit, we'd get a refresh. And we had a separate process that would delete those at night, kind of keep that separate. And that actually worked really good. Rate performance is really good, especially like an insurance company. If someone's looking to insure a property, you got different parts of the company. Well, I guess the API that I wrote, everyone in the company is, the same API. They didn't all spin up their own. So between claims and underwriting and sales and everything, they all use the same API, which is great. They didn't have to think about it. Everything routed through there. So once it got kicked into the caching, it would, it'd usually be hit hard for a week or two. And then it wasn't. So it really helped us out a lot by doing that caching for a short bit of time. And I guess, one interesting thing I was thinking about this. I could never decide in code whether to check as soon as the request was made, if I should check if the cache exists first, or if I should validate the zip code and state first, because those were just, hard things. You could tell if they were valid or not. It's like, should I check if they're valid or not? Check the cache. Actually, I think I'd have checking the state and zip code first, but then a lot of data issues. I won't go over all of these, but it's just, that was just part of the business. It was, there was always exceptions. We ended up running this off. Eventually, we backfilled this on their existing addresses, and it was almost 8 million addresses. So there's always exceptions in there. It was just part of the job. And I guess the key was just logging everything. Like if the request came in, you could log exactly what the request was that we were sending out to the external service, and you could log exactly what you got back. You have correlation IDs in there, and obviously timestamps and users. And you could, like, in my mind, you could literally see every single thing that happened. So like reproducing issues was trivial. You could just go back to log exactly what was called, what came back. So it made kind of sorting out these one-offs pretty easy. Just a few more things. Let's see. Yeah, keeping an address valid. So we'd let users, once Google verified an address, and we'd say, okay, you live at this location, these different tiers and zones, we can give you this insurance rate. And we would actually, if they modified address line 2 because they had it in a suite or an apartment or something, we would still consider that a completely precise and valid address as long as they didn't touch any of the other fields. And then if they did modify the other fields, because sometimes addresses, within the database is not what exists in reality, we could just downgrade them to different statuses. That's kind of how we handle that. We just had different statuses of precision. So, if the zip code wasn't changed, we could still insure based on that zip code. So it's kind of it was a good way to handle that, because I think addresses in the US are a lot messier than New Zealand.
Yeah.
Sorry to disturb.
That was good time. Good break.
There's not a lot of grievance. So,
Say always good at dynamics.
but I
part.
still already got them.
Thanks.
Yeah, we looked at other services. I think more than this, and this is only one. This is actual numbers, one sample we ran, but every sample I ran, Google was so much better in like partial addresses, things missing or inaccurate. It's like there's really no competition.
What is the 40 represent?
That's just how many I did. So like for this sample, there was 200 total, but I did 40 of each of those scenarios. And some of them, this was like just one sample I could find, like in an old email. We did bigger ones than this. But we'd like, yeah, we intentionally like, I'd find one because it didn't have a zip code. This one's not that big of a deal, but it was still like a small difference. Is like address line 2 is, I mean, this is the front end, but it was the same on the back end as well. If you put something like suite number in, it would, yeah, Bing would lose it, and Google would keep it. And that was good, like as we were passing addresses through the different systems. Just a small thing like that made it a lot easier to work with. So we looked at other ones, but for our needs, Google just came out better. This is something I've said a lot. So I think this is even more in the States than here, is like an address does not represent a specific point on there. You want it to, in a lot of cases it kind of does, but addresses get sloppy and messy and they change, and zip codes change, and the rules change. So it's kind of good to keep that distinction in mind, especially when talking to business, because it kind of explains a lot of the limitations. And this is kind of cool. I haven't looked at this in a couple of years. This is actually the API that I wrote. This is the live version, it's the docs. Everything requires an API identifier, but all the ones that are finding up the buildings. We had like separate services for city and
The Super Mario service.
it's good you noticed that. I'm going to tell you. This crime one's cool. This one is brand new. I had not seen this, so that's cool. They're still adding stuff since I've been gone. But yeah, so the big one was we got more like we'd start with distance to coast. We added more tiers, and so eventually what happened? It's kind of what you'd expect. They want to take a single address and do everything at once. They like just run it through every service we have. We don't care. We want to compare every distance, every tier, every zone, every property. And then so we did that, and then they would say, well, we really, because these are other developers telling me what they want. And they're like, really, this is great, Jason, but we want to do like 20 locations at once. We don't want to just send you one. So now I got these massive JSON objects. And I said, did you just want a super duper, consolidated location service? And they're like, yeah, Super Mario. So that's what they called it in-house. And the sad thing is, actually, they called it that so much. I actually wrote this as an Easter egg. This is the only API point that doesn't have an identifier. So this is like live on. They're going to see like IP from New Zealand. They're going to know it's me. So you can call the Super Mario service. It's in the docs. Yeah. And there's like lots of them. That's actually like live in the production. I did randomizes it out. It took them years to find that. But yeah, I could see how how documentation is important to these people. I'm sure you guys have all seen this, but there's one person that hasn't. This is like the coolest game ever. You guys see this as GeoGuessr? I love this thing. Oh, it's like.
It's dead to you.
Never mind, I'm never doing it. It's like, if anyone hasn't, it's like every time we come in Google Street View, just get some random place and you gotta guess where you're at in the earth and, paste it. Have you ever seen it? Oh, now I feel like I want to.
Jason.
Yeah.
You can play this against people as well, so you can like all do it alone versus each other.
Yeah. It's more fun than it sounds.
We're not carrying it.
Yeah, I know, it's actually working. Yeah, you do like 5 of them, otherwise it's takes so long.
Oh, that's fine. No, we get America.
Walk around.
Definitely American.
Yeah.
Oh, that's on the left.
It
Yeah.
could be Canada.
Wait, that was like a,
Canada's on the right as well.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's got it's kilometers there. I always like to find signs and like look at the web page, and then you can look at like the domain or something they use. That kind of narrows it down. Where do you think this one is? This is
Middle of the ocean. It's in Europe.
France.
No, they've driven the right. England.
Can you guess?
Oh. That was pretty good.
That was a 2.
Oh,
Yeah, France would have been closer.
France tries on the opposite side of the road.
I don't know. That's actually kind of fun.
Oh, 4 hours.
Thanks for this.
I won't download one. This is what I did start here with for like confidence and a few others, maybe just specific and stuff. I just did some research on the different ones, kind of binder, validator. It's oddly those things overlap more than you think they would. and just some of the rates and pros and cons. Google is expensive, obviously. I like Google. Most I've heard is hard to implement.
If anyone wants lots of New Zealand Post stories about how much they suck, feel free to ask me.
What?
We used them on my birthday.
What
They
did
were
the vote?
they were the worst service I've ever integrated.
So we really didn't get any like cool really distance algorithms. And the reason for that is, I mean, they can be fun and I guess it's good to know, but pretty much 100% of the time they've already been done and they've been done better. And I guess your job's more to research them, find the best ones that come, you can, there's some objects now for built into, I mean, they've worked nicely with .NET, obviously we have the SQL types. There's tons of APIs out there, some free, some cost money. There's Stack Overflow people, Stack Exchange, they have a GIS exchange that does a lot of this. So I don't know, it's fun, but might not the best use, it's not gonna be the most efficient use of your time. And I would say be pragmatic. Like I said, with the territories, we just did zip code. The buildings, we only did them as defaults. People could override them because we weren't 100% confidence. The distance to coast, I got an argument or a discussion with my boss. He thought it should only take lat long in the request. I said I made it lat long and state because you always know what state you're in. Everybody does in the U.S. And it actually depended on whether you, that was one of the factors in whether you had coverage, even though literally it wasn't just a standalone service that could just get distance to coast based on lat long. And you could reverse geocode it too from lat long to get the state. That's a whole extra step. So just being pragmatic, I said, let's just include state, even though it literally doesn't have to be in there. And I think that was the right call. That's plenty. Yeah. So you think about every valuable thing a computer does, it has to manifest itself somehow in the physical world. I think location is like a really good example of that, kind of a cross section of computers and then, you know, where things exist in the world and the universe. I think it's really cool. And this is not really on topic, but half the stuff I've been talking about hasn't been. I'm not going to play this, but this is another one if you guys haven't seen it. Have you guys ever seen this guy? Wrong. Have you seen that? It's like a TED Talk thing. This just blows my mind though. This is like, he has two axes here. And one is income adjusted for, you know, for the date and time, and the other is life expectancy. And every one of these dots is a country in the world. And, you know, just 200 years ago, everybody was down in the spot, in the bottom area, basically. And over time, you see all these dots at different speeds. Some are a little slower, some are a little faster. Basically, you're seeing like every single country in the world go up in income and up in life expectancy. And I guess that's really cool because like you kind of look at the news and stuff, and everything seems super negative. But if you look at the actual stats, it's like the world's doing better than it ever has. It's like everybody is being uplifted, maybe not at the same rate, maybe not, you know, at the same time. And I really think like, you know, some of the technology, like going back to the original Jon Snow and using technology and information is kind of helping that. And I feel like we do that in a tiny way, right? It's like everything we do here, it's like helps just a little bit. Like even the location stuff specific, get stuff a little cheaper, a little faster, a little more efficient. It could just be a meal or, you know, a dating app or locating somebody, or it could be police and fire services, but all that stuff kind of adds up. And I really think, I don't know, it's good to see at the end of this, all these countries are going up that axis. It makes me feel good. That was but let's see how it makes this guy feel. the statute of limitations is over. That was 1 year ago today.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I was playing shitty harmonic music as well. Is it the same shirt? No,
Oh,
that's not the same shirt.
close.
Can we upload it on YouTube?
Someone
Sure.
I don't even have that
Who
shirt
were
anymore.
you playing?
You want to play ready this time?
Oh.
King of the world.
Should I do the Slack thing?
Good for you.
I forgot the 8th.
You could go today. You're pretty happy too, Alina.
Yeah, I remember it. I remember.
Alina's like right there.
Yeah, I was like, oh god, Jason's falling.
You guys saw the camera. I don't feel bad.
Yeah.
Elena's like, I wish I could forget.
No, I don't wish to forget. I thought it was a fun time.
Any questions? Anything location related at all? It's a hard topic to cover. I thought about that. The area I went was very narrow, but kind of how it goes.
With your insurance thing,
Mhm.
did you have different parts of the coast having to have different distances away? Rather than like one set distance away from the
It
coastline?
was the rates varied. They had, I don't remember the exact bands, but you know, like if I'm wrong side of the coast, you can't get insurance, and then like, and this was a predefined, so at like 0.1 we would start accepting them. So I don't know what the band was, but maybe like 0.1 to like 2 or 3 miles was like a really high rate.
Right.
And then we didn't have like too many bands. There were probably like 5 or 6 where the rates would, the further away you went, the better your rate was. But it was kind of, and there was also, like things are in the US, everything was very state dependent as well. So what state you were in based on these bands kind of determined. Then it got more complicated, because there's like parts of New Orleans, Louisiana, where you could be both coastlines, right? The Atlantic Ocean, and then the Mobile Bay, which was right there, where that would actually could flood over. So you'd have like 2 coastlines there. And it did get complicated. That's kind of what we did there, just manage all the complexities. The business would change constantly. And we did Hawaii too. That was just one. You know.
Previous, like, you had a bunch of path finding algorithms. You had to develop your own, or did you develop your own, like, shortest distance and shape algorithm, or did you just ended up using something that was more off the shelf?
For distance?
Yeah.
I was just using the SQL built-in types.
Really?
It's great. I had no idea. Still to this day, it's not like a super well-known thing. And back then, I like even asked around the office, one person's like, yeah, maybe I heard of that. So in SQL, you can define these shapes and save them in a database. You can just do, like that SD distance. Yeah, there's geometry types. I wish they had examples in here. They actually have. Screenshot. Forget the other ones. You can see if things intersect. You can see if how far away they are from each other. You can use lines. You can use points. You can use complex shapes. Yeah, here. This SD distance, like they have a bunch of these. I don't know what a lot of these are. Something equal to something.
But things are just my accent. Just my accent being bad.
They named it after Jason.
Yeah, I was like, oh, it would be cool.
No, I would definitely recommend looking at it. It's surprisingly well how well they work and they're accurate. Like what was kind of cool in that example I showed you is one way you could prove it is using SQL database to do you have, this isn't your homepage, Jess? Is So we're using SQL to get this number, but then these lines are being drawn based on Google. And the cool thing is I had a flag in here where I could actually just add a Google shape from the center, do a circle and say, hey, draw this circle and make it, make the radius 4.29. And we would do this, you could do it all over the country. It could be 1,000 miles away. And it was shocking how close the line would actually get to touching the coastline, which it should in theory, but it actually got like really close. Like a lot of times you'd have to zoom all the way in to just even see a little gap where it was off. So the precision was really good and the speed was really good too. It's like, I don't think it's a good way to handle it. It's weird that you don't even talk about much. So yeah, no API, just use SQL built.
Is all the stuff in SQL just as crow flies? Or does it follow roads?
That one is as the crow flies, yeah. Roads would be very different. Now that's when you probably would use like an API. That's getting pretty complicated organization. And you can, I think, services have that kind of stuff. But then, yeah, you factor in a lot of stuff. Patient.
Yeah.
Duration. But yeah, if you do this too basic, like you just think a 2 point, then you're going through the that's wrong. Curve, that's better, but then it's not a circle, so you're missing that. So yeah, like true representation, which this does. It'd be weird though, right? You're like, someone could be like 10 kilometers from the coast, but then once you for our purposes, factor in mountains, so probably 15.
That sounds though, right? Because I'm guessing the whole reason don't want them too close to the coast is because of floods.
Yes.
That doesn't happen way.
That would be, you know what, see if you could factor that in, you would be at the top of the insurance game. You could, if you start factoring in like actual topography, and we did a lot more of this with like fault lines and stuff too, but we were more using other APIs, so we were consuming stuff, and it was cool, but it wasn't as fun. It was consuming other APIs on different fault zones. But then you get too much information too. It's like business doesn't know what to do with it. It's like, oh great, you gave me these, these 50 fault zones that none of them have been active in centuries. Like what are we supposed to do? So they kind of just hit on the bigger stuff, the obvious stuff, big fault lines, the ocean, type of material you build a house on. Anyone else? Or we're already over. End it there. All right. Focus on that, we're stopping.